Hello, my name is Dr. Roger K. Green, and I am founding the Center for Critical and Cultural Theory. While largely virtual, I'm also providing and curating in-person activities beginning with my hometown of Denver. So my initial project is called the Center for Critical and Cultural Theory of Denver, but you don't have to live in Denver to take advantage of our course offerings or our online seminars. It's just that I will be offering some physical activities as well, an in-person meeting for folks in Denver. So the aim of my project here comes from my frustrations of being a professor for most of my adult life. I've been teaching at the university level since 2003. I have two PhDs. My first PhD is in English with an emphasis in rhetoric and theory. So I do like literary theory, literary criticism. I focus in those types of areas rather than say a period specialist, like a Victorian literature person or a creative writer. I study the ways that we read, and that crosses discourse with all sorts of philosophy, psychology, a lot of interdisciplinary work grounds my interests of study, let alone this idea of rhetoric or the study of rhetoric, which takes us all the way back to at least the ancient Greeks. So I'm interested in aesthetics, I'm interested in literary theory, and I'm particularly interested in philosophy and this niche area of philosophy called political theology, which I used to analyze the psychedelic movement in my first dissertation and in my now published book, A Transatlantic Political Theology of Psychedelic Aesthetics, or Enchanted Citizens. Despite how much money this book costs, I have never made any money from that book, and this is part of the problem, right? The university education and the materials along with it are enormously expensive and getting more expensive. They're controlled more like corporate businesses, and they leave creative professors like myself less able to quickly implement curriculum that speaks to current issues. And so there's a gap between the students who are coming to university and the sense of meaning that it has in their lives. And at the same time, for a large population of educated people who've gone to school and gotten degrees and have jobs, maybe in tech, for example, where you're making really good money, I've noticed out in the community, a lot of people tell me like, well, I would love to take your myth and literature class. I'd love to take your Shakespeare class. I'd love to take your class on mysticism and psychedelics, now that I'm done with school, but I don't need to get a master's degree. I don't need another degree. And I don't want to take all of the other required classes that are necessary if I'm going to go back and get a degree before I can take the classes that I'm really interested in. So that's part of what I've set up here. In terms of an educational, adult, ongoing, lifelong learning type of endeavor. I am focused on adult learners, at least at the current moment, and people who are seeking more meaning in their lives than, just, going out to restaurants or watching Netflix night after night or having beers and getting drunk with friends, which can be fun. But I think at a certain point in time, and after the COVID pandemic and through the elections processes and how divisive our country is right now, we're kind of lacking civic engagement, and we have a wide gap between popular education and serious engagement with learning. We have a lot of edutainment out there. We have a lot of ways that you can inform yourself on a fairly surface level about maybe emergent trends in psychedelics from Netflix documentaries. But you've watched a few of them and you've realized that you're just getting the same kind of remixed information over and over again. Same thing happens with podcasts. The Center for Critical and Cultural Theory aims to cut through that, to dig into a deeper level. You might see other endeavors that are kind of using whimsical ideas to get people involved in civic engagement. And I have no problem with those types of initiatives existing, but my initiative is going to be to dig deeper into things, to read with people. It's kind of like a book club on steroids or something. And to really dig into classic texts. So we have a number of series that we'll be offering. It's starting just with myself, and so I'm teaching things that I know, but I will be bringing in other scholars and creative people to add their own expertise as I can get off the ground and get launched with this. So my initial course offerings and private lessons, things like that, will be offered through the website. Some of them that I'm beginning with is an ongoing reading in classics of this field of critical theory, which looks at cultural problems or looks at the level of society for the problems that we see going on. So rather than just looking at individuals and what they can do, we look at the ways that we have been socially formed, the ways that decisions that maybe politics or our parents or the ways that we were brought up and educated shape us and shape our ideas about the self, about the world, and that the things that were left out of that education, like for many U.S. citizens, Native American history is something that they have not heard a whole lot about, but is very present in current day culture. So when we're talking about or thinking about anti-colonial efforts or looking at debates around statues coming down that are all about civic and public life, and they're connected with aesthetics and art and the statues and the ways that we've chosen to represent life to ourselves as a community, a lot of us aren't informed about something like colonial history of the United States. We have a ideological education that we've been brought up with, and a lot of us as adults are trying to decolonize, and we might hear that as a buzzword, but we don't necessarily know what it means. And there's a kind of language that I think occupies a lot of university speak that feels very foreign to people who don't go to university, and that creates yet another gap in terms of our ability to feel like we live in a community together. And so by focusing on community, I'm not at all meaning to diminish the need for intellectual life and for ideas of something like culture, but we're going to have to be critical about what our assumptions about culture itself might be. And critical theory as a traditional discourse helps us get at that. This is not a lecture right now on what critical theory is, but that's one angle. That's why we're calling critical and cultural theory in our title. I'm a lover of literature, and ongoing engagement with language is a really important way that I interact with the world in general. And there's an ongoing series of Shakespeare reading that I will inflect with critical theory readings or political theological readings, so that we can have an ongoing discourse and engagement. And then when plays happen, we can go see them together, or putting together reading groups about Native American history, and then going to see an exhibit at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Denver, which, as I'm making this video, has amazing exhibits by two Indigenous artists. And so what we want to do with the Center for Critical and Cultural Theory is to really heighten the engagement and the ability to take advantage of what is happening in our town and in our moment, and also be able to bridge out of Denver and connect with other people. So we offer online courses, Zoom seminars that allow us to engage with the broader world as well. and allow experts from around the world and just regular people from around the world to engage with us, and to inform and think alongside each other about what it means to live and be and live well in the 21st century. Issues of social justice will, of course, arise, and all sorts of different individual seminars as our political situation changes. We're in a discourse about genocide right now, with what's been going on with Ukraine and comments that President Joe Biden has made. And so I'm offering a course on genocide, or the Genocide Convention this fall, because, again, normal, everyday U.S. citizens are not taught a lot about international politics and are not taught about things like the Genocide Convention in high school, and not generally in college unless you are specifically engaging in political science or something. So how do we think about these big concepts, neoliberalism, genocide, theory, critical theory, discourse analysis, even things like the misuses of so-called critical race theory, which has been a tagline that's been co-opted by certain political groups to demonize things. I want to have these discussions, and from an angle that pushes beyond the surface sort of right-left, like archaic, to me, metaphor about a political divide in our country. And I will say more about that in other lectures, but that sort of entrenched kind of self-identification with, whether it be with a certain ethnicity, with a certain political party, nationality, any of the categories that fall under what people call inclusive excellence in our corporate world today. Really thinking about what is driving those impulses in our world, which isn't always to be critical of something like being inclusive or something like that, right? It's just to think about where our discourse is coming from and how those ideas and thought movements and programs that we watch, movies that we watch, books that we read, the media that we soak in, our cookies, feeds on our computers, how that comes to form and shape an engagement with our lives, and how do we make sense of all of this sort of stuff together. That's a brief description of what I'm after. I am starting from scratch, and I have no funding, and I would like to get funding from hopefully some of you out there in the Patreon community, and with some other events that will be coming up this summer as I launch my website and launch this as a business that will hopefully grow and be able to do some good in the Denver community. It's a labor of love right now, and so I welcome any kind of funding or contributions that you might be able to have to support an intellectual endeavor like this. Please feel free to contact me if you have more questions, and visit our website for more programming as it becomes available. Thank you.